Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use AWS Session Manager to access your private instance in the private subnet. So we know that we can access an EC2 instance that has a public IP address, or we can access a batching server, and from the batching server, we can connect to the instance that is in the private subnet. But what if we don't have public subnet in my VPC as illustrated in this diagram? What if I only have private subnets with instances that only have private IP addresses? So how do I access those instances? The answer is to use AWS Session Manager. In order for Session Manager to work, so following four things needs to be there. First, you need to use the image with SSM agent installed, such as the Amazon Linux 2. Second, you need to allow HTTPS traffic in your security group rule. Third, you need to attach an IAM role that has the SSM managed instance policy to the instance. And fourth, you need to set up following interface endpoints in your VPC. So with that, let's go ahead and implement it. So here's my VPC console. Let's go ahead and create the VPC. So I will call it demo, and I will follow the design that in the presentation. I'm going to use just one AZ. I'm not going to have any public subnet. I'm going to have one private subnet. I'm not going to have a NAT gateway, and I'm not going to have a VPC endpoint yet. So with that, I create my VPC. Okay, so yeah, let me open new tab to spin up a instance by going to the EC2 console. And click on launch instance. So here I use a secure instance as the name, and I will use the default Amazon Linux AMI, which has the SSM agent pre-installed. I will use T2 micro as the instance type. Since I'm going to use SSM to connect to it, I don't need the key pair. In the network setup, because I only have one VPC, one subnet, so let's keep it as is. I am going to create a new security group to allow SSH traffic. In fact, I'm not going to allow SSH traffic. I'm going to allow HTTPS traffic. And with that, I will go ahead and launch the instance. Okay, so the instance has been successfully launched. So let's go ahead and review the instance. Still in the pending stage. If we look at the security, it has a inbound rule to allow 443 traffic, so this looks good. And with that, we go back to the requirement. 1, 2 has been complete. Third is to attach a role. So let's go ahead and do that. So in the management console, I type IAM and go to IAM. And click on roles. I'm going to create a new role. by clicking on Create Row. Select EC2. Click on Next. So need to add a permission. Right, so let's type SSM, hit enter. Expand a little bit and select this one called Amazon SSM Managed Instance Core, so which includes the core functionalities needed to use Session Manager. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to also add some S3 roles so that this instance can perform during the demo. So let's give a S3 read-only access and click on Next. We put the name, let's say demo EC2 row. So the transparency is fine. We can see the two permissions have been added. One is for S3 read-only, the other is for SSM managed row. Looks great. Click on Create Row to create the row. With the row being created, let's go back to the EC2 tag, and with the instance selected, and now you can see the instance state is in the running state, right? So let's go ahead and click on Action, click on Security, click on Modify IAM row. So select Demo EC2 row and click on Update IAM row. So with that, we can go ahead and verify by clicking on the instance and click on Connect and go to the Session Manager tab. And as you can see right now, we were not able to connect yet. So we still have one last piece needs to be completed, which is to establish the interface endpoint for SSM. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to VPC. And click on endpoints from the left side. So right now there's no endpoints being created. Let's click on create endpoint. First is called SSM. It's a AWS service. So let's search SSM in the service and hit enter. So we select this first. It's com.amazon aws the region, in my case CIS-1.ssm. So you need to specify the VPC as well as the availability zone and the subnet. So with that, we will choose IPv4, and we are going to apply the same security group to allow 443 traffic to go through. With that, let's click on create endpoints. And I'm going to repeat the same process to create another two. The other is SSM message. And I will call it SSM message. Same, the VPC subnet, the private subnet where the secure server is hosted, and select the security group that's associated with the instance as well. Click on endpoint. And lastly, we need to create another one called EC2 message. Let's search for it. EC2 messages. So this one. Same. Select IPv4. Select the security group and click on create. So if you click on the endpoints again, you will see that 4 endpoints has been created. And if you are interested, you can see that in fact 3 new network interface has been created within my VPC to represent those VPC endpoints. So let's wait a few minutes until all the endpoints becomes available. And go back to the EC2 console, refresh the page. You will be able to see the connect button under Session Manager. If you do not see it, you might have to wait a few minutes and retry to wait until the VPC endpoints gets created for you. So with that, I just click on connect to open a new secure session from my browser to the private instance. Here, the Session Manager console gets loaded. As you can see, it has a session ID, instance ID, and also the option to terminate the session. And with the shell terminal window here, and I can run all commands to interact with the instance as we did before using PuTTY through SSH, right? So, for example, what I can do is to display the host name, etc., and also ping the other instances, for example. So here's one thing. So since, remember, we have granted S3 read-only access to this instance, so let us go ahead and test that out by running the AWS CLI command S3 ls to list all the buckets within my account. And as you can see, it stopped there because as you can see from this diagram, right, so really I don't allow any outbound traffic from this secure instance, even like to my S3 service. So how to address this problem? The solution is that we create a S3 gateway endpoint within the private subnet so that I can access the S3 service, which is also running in the AWS cloud environment, by going through this internal gateway endpoint, and to make sure that the traffic from my private instance to the S3 service are all private traffic within the AWS infrastructure. So let's go ahead and implement that. Let's go to VPC endpoint and click on create endpoint. So this time I will say S3 and I will select S3, hit enter. So I can either create a gateway endpoint for S3 or interface. So let's choose the gateway endpoint and select the demo VPC and select the route table, because unlike the interface endpoint, the gateway endpoints will add an entry to the route table. So I will select the private route table. With that, I will click on create endpoint. So unlike interface endpoint, the gateway endpoint will be created and be available to you right away. So let's switch back to the Session Manager and let us run the same command again to see. I don't have a S3 bucket here, so let's go ahead and create one. Going through S3. And click on create bucket. The random name, DDI demo, some random number, and hit create bucket. So the bucket is being successfully created. Let's go back and run the command again. And as you can see, this time I was able to successfully retrieve the bucket information from S3. So this illustrates that we establish a private connection between my private instance to my AWS service. So with that, we conclude today's video.